Hey, curious friends, it's Heinrich here. Well, today's topic is what does it take to get into overlanding? You're kind of just an average person interested in getting into it, right? First off, what is even overlanding? There's lots of definitions out there, but my kind of Heinrich right off the bat definition is you like to camp, you like to camp with friends, and you want to go places where most people don't go because you enjoy the primitive parts of it. And you're going to drive across the country, across land, to kind of find these places and experience the world. Um, Lots of things to talk about. How do you even get into it? What equipment do you need? And today's focus is going to be on the Jeep, and in particular, the recent modification that I made to it to make the quality of service and the experience of it much better. And this year's upgrade was my differentials. So when was it? About a year ago, we upgraded the Jeep to 35-inch tires. We went from stock, which were 32 inches, and we went to 35 inches. They are the BF Goodrich KO2s, which most people go with in the Jeeping community. They've been an absolute fantastic tire. Have nothing bad to say about them. To install those, we had to get one of these hubs that extends it out further, and then we bought the AV rims before we mounted the tires onto it. But one thing we noticed when we started just exploring, getting on the interstate and everything else, is just lack of power. Gosh, it got so much slower from 0 on up. But you really noticed it on the interstate when you were trying to pass people. Then it exponentially got worse when you see here on your right, we got this trailer and we started towing this trailer with the Jeep to get to some of these really remote locations. And at last, we finally said, you know what, we need to change something so we have a bit more power. And that actually came about. We were in Telluride. We went to the last dollar road, which is this off-road, off on the side near Telluride. And we were not stuck, but a car came by. We had to pull over to the side on a pretty steep incline. And it wasn't for low, and we started accelerating, and I couldn't get over like 10 miles an hour. So I knew I had a big power problem, and I don't want to end up in that situation. So bit the bullet. Initially thought I'm going to try to do this myself with my friend. So I bought from Yukon. I got the 4.88s, right? So there'll be questions on why did you go with 4.88? Why not with larger ones or smaller? Where do I even start, right? I don't know this stuff. Where do I even start? Fortunately, I spoke with Dirty Dog Off-Road. So they're out here in Albuquerque. They have a place on San Mateo. And Fred is the owner, and he is phenomenal. Knows a lot about these vehicles, has been doing it for a very long time. And sat down with me, looked at, okay, what kind of load are you pulling? How large are your tires? It's a JKU 2016. So he recommended the right gear ratio for me. I know online there's a lot of forums, you can find that too. But 4.8 is what he recommended. And the process is pretty straightforward. So I had these parts. I decided, you know what? I have a mechanical engineering degree. I have an engineering master's. But just getting your hands in there and dealing with all the lubrication inside of my garage with kids and everything else. And I was like, you know what? Let's just have Fred do it. He knows what he's doing too. So we dropped it off, and it only took Fred about 2 days. And then after 2 days, he gave me a call. I drove back down, and he said, okay, now you have to deal with a break-in period of these gears. So why is there a break-in period, and what does that kind of consist of, right? So it's 500 miles. The first 100 miles are pretty regimented. Don't drive more than 30 miles at a time, and let your differential thermal cycle. So what that means is drive it, heat up your differential, and then let it sit until it cools down again and do it again. So city driving is really the only thing you can do to do that well. Don't drive on the interstate. Then after 100 miles, you get upgraded. They're like, yeah, okay, look, you can get on the interstate, but don't use cruise control because you want to change speeds. So your gears, the the teeth in the gears actually rub up against one another, because that's really what that means. The break-in period is the tolerances on these gears, right? They're not perfect. So the first time you marry up the pinion gear with the other gear, differential gear. And once again, not an expert on all the words. Like, you'll learn about me, like the tech roadrunner guy, like he knows generally, but he doesn't always have all the words. I grew up in Germany. What can I say? So with that said, the gears like rub up against another, and then they create these like metal shards, and those fall into the differential fluid. So after 500 miles, they want to flush the fluid, because at that point, the gears have pretty much married up well together. So anyways, did that. But I learned something really interesting. So here we were. First 100 miles were easy. God, the Jeep felt great. I could just like explore off that line. I felt like I was in a stock vehicle again. So that was amazing. But then when we upgraded to the interstate, we just started driving 65 miles an hour and faster, the whole vehicle began to vibrate. I felt it in my feet from the floor panels. I heard it in the dash, those vibrations. The whole vehicle just vibrated. My whole family noticed. So after doing a little bit of research and talking to Fred, right, first everyone was blaming the tires. Like, oh, it's your tires. You got to get them balanced, blah. But these were brand new. Just had them balanced. The hubs looked fine too. And also the vibration wasn't just in the steering wheel. I felt it across the whole vehicle. So Fred took a look at it. So did I. And I think we came to the conclusion that it's the drive shaft, in particular the front drive shaft. So we still have the stock drive shafts on this car. The car has 100,000 miles on it. And what I learned was when you change out the differentials, the gears on the differentials, the drive shaft spins significantly faster than it used to. So you're going to start noticing imperfections in your drive shaft. So he took a look at it. It's pretty loose. So he recommended, let's just put a new front drive shaft on. Let's put a wire at it. Do the rear as well. It's a smarter way to do that. So he kind of came up with an invoice I just paid. It looks like the Tom Woods 1310 series drive shaft, front and rear, $785 per drive shaft, total of $1,570. And then labor to replace them is 2.5 hours, $135 per labor hour. So a total of $337.50. That after tax. Plus, he had to do the gear service at 500 miles. So you put full synthetic oil into the differentials. Came in a total of $22.68. Parts come in next week, so then he'll replace those. And I'll let you know how that kind of feels, and if the car starts feeling like stock again, because the season is starting and my family wants to go camping, and this truck needs to be ready for that. Okay, so that was my update for today. I promised in the future I'll walk you through the entire Jeep and all the modifications we made during COVID. We'll talk a bit more about overlanding and other tech that you can actually put on this Jeep. But hey, thanks for your time. Stay curious, not judgmental. All right, thanks.